The views and opinions expressed by the host and guests of this show do not represent their employing agency, department, or organization. All information should be regarded as anecdotal, contextual, and educational, and should not be misinterpreted as legal or medical advice. From interviews to jail calls, Ditto Transcripts delivers fast, confidential, and court-ready transcription for law enforcement agencies. Ditto is CJIS compliant and is already working with agencies all over the U.S., including the Washington State Patrol and the National Park Service Investigations Unit. Get started now at dittotranscripts.com. That's dittotranscripts.com. When you don't know how a recruit's really doing until week 10, that's a problem. TrackWired's field training management software replaces old-school paperwork with a clean, automated system. Streamlined reporting, knowledge comprehension, and crystal-clear performance trends all handled in one secure place. TrackWire gives you real-time insight into their field training process so supervisors get real-time visibility. FTOs save hours and recruits stay on track. If you want to tighten up your FTO program, start by going to trackwire.com. That's TRACwire.com. Welcome to Blue Grit Radio, the podcast that explores making better cops for a better community. I'm your host, Eric Tung. I've been an active police officer since 2007. We will dive into the aspects of police culture, health and wellness, leadership, and mindset. You'll hear from experts not only from policing, but all industries as they relate to being our best with purpose, passion, and positivity. Join me as we share stories, lessons, and advice so we can all be better for ourselves, our teams, our families, and our communities. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is your host, Eric, and today I'm going to riff on 5 tips and themes that can be applied to the active cop. So this is the quote-unquote mid-career, but however you want to look at it, you've had some years in the saddle, 5, 10, 15, 20, and things to focus on, things to renew your resolve and hit that refresh button in certain ways. This comes from a lot of engagement and questions that I get in social media and people talking to me about how can I stay positive? You know, I missed this promotion, or I don't want to promote. How do I stay engaged? Or I feel like I'm in a rut, XYZ. So these are all different factors that we can apply to these different situations, because if we recognize being new, you have plenty to focus on, and hopefully the salt hasn't crusted on in a mere 2 to 3 years, although I've seen it happen, certainly. I've felt it happen in myself, working with a group that was a bit more cynical for sure, and I've spoken about that quite a bit, of not being able to control your environment, or more importantly, regulate how you interact with that environment. So I've seen it happen, but how can we stay more positive? Because hopefully, like I said, the new folks are pretty engaged. They know their why, and they're plugged in, they're dialed in, they're trying to adapt and learn and grow. They have more than a full plate if they're doing it right, and plenty of resources on that in this show. So without further, let's just get into number 1. So I just said it, but reassess your why. This can be old really quick. We have this job that we recognize if we take a step back, there's so many moments that are so significant that we can influence. That could be anything from a simple dispute. That could be a pretty high incident call, especially depending on the environment and the jurisdiction you work in, the amount of crime, the amount of violent crime. But it's not to say that violent crime equals impact, or responding to it equals impact. We know that can be the case, but also through so many conversations with experienced law enforcement officers and first responders on this show and plenty other amazing shows that explore similar crossover topics, a lot of times it is the small, quote unquote, small calls that stick out to us. It's the simpler moments where you're able to provide that solution or the best stab at a solution for the given time. A lot of times people, when they look back on their years, they can think about these key moments where they're really glad it was them that showed up and how they were able to show up in such a way. So by reassessing our why, we can hit that refresh button and we can remember what it was like when we came in. I had this amazing gift, which was to work in recruiting in the year circa 2020, right following. So 2022 and on, where I was meeting a lot of people and I was hearing their why. When everyone was saying, stay away, don't do this job, there were many people that were not dissuaded. There were many people that grew up wanting to be a cop, and maybe 2020 hit and they're like, oh, maybe not. My family's deterring me away from it. but in 6 months to a year, they're like, no, this is what I want to do. And to be able to hear those stories, to be able to hear that passion, to meet those people, see it in their eyes, hear it in their voice, it does refresh you. It has to. And we can remember our why. And it doesn't take being a recruiter to recognize that. I think about many trainings that I've been in. Some are leadership trainings, some are wellness trainings, some are just a little bit in their own niche. But oftentimes, whether it was the prompt to it or just a breakout group, when people talk about like what is the point of the police or what is the point of how you show up or why did you want to do this job in the first place and what was the unit you wanted to work or what are some of the most validating experiences you have, really quickly, most of us can remember these really positive experiences and drivers to bring us in and to bring us back. I wish, and I might have heard this advice and I'd like to share it when I think of it, but it is to tell people, just like I always do in interview prep and job prep, I say like, yeah, like really know your answer. Like, why do you want to do this job? Not just to help people, but why specifically this job? And I ask people to take notes. I ask people to make outlines so they can study them for their interviews and moving on. But I also suggest and ask people to hold on to that and maybe set a reminder, maybe the anniversary date of your hire date, maybe just an arbitrary day, maybe the first of the year, every year, where you put it in your phone and you ask yourself to look up that email or that Google Doc that tells you what your purpose is in this job and otherwise. And I would submit that if the majority of people did that, if the majority of cops did that, they would be much more engaged, much more balanced in their approach and fulfilled and feeling passionate and convicted to what they are giving so much of their time, energy, stress, bandwidth towards. So it's not nothing. It might feel like a revolving door at times, but imagine if there were no police in society or in just your neighborhood where you live or the neighborhood where you work. What would happen in a few hours, in a couple days, a few weeks? What would happen in a year? Not fun things to think about. So let's zoom back out and recognize that this is a very critical job that so many of you listeners are doing or are supporting us doing it. Number 2, invest in your health. So we know we preach wellness, we preach fitness, we preach nutrition, all these things. Some people come to the job and they get really dialed in, they get in really good shape. There's a rigidity to academy, there's a rigidity to the classroom structured life. They're working out at academy, hopefully. And then they go into their shift work and then they have to figure out like a new routine and how to manage and coexist with your existing life structure, your existing family structure. Your sleep suffers, you're hitting that fast food, that 4th, 5th, 6th meal. That is often not the best thing for your mind or body, and things slump. You work overtime, you become an asset. People praise you for working overtime. You feel invigorated, you feel useful, you're bringing back money for savings or for your family, and those are all good things. However, we get a bit out of balance, especially without intention, especially without routines. So that does usually fall at some point in people's lives. And I've definitely had periods where I was not well, I was not happy or healthy. And that is why I feel so strongly about the things that we talk about on this show, which are all things wellness. That is why I built the course Get Gritty, to really focus in on mindset, routines, and wellness practice for the frequently imbalanced first responder life and other challenging work-life balances and structures. But all to say, if you are a handful of years in, you feel invigorated, like you know what you're doing in your job, then I highly encourage you to take a look at your life, take a look at your wellness, and think of the different pillars as or spokes of a wheel as they've been socialized through many sources. But how is your physical wellness? So that breaks down to how is your nutrition? How is your workout routine? How's your cardio? How's your strength training? How's your mobility? How's your sleep? How's your recovery? If you want to get in the weeds and nerd out, HRV, are you tracking that? Like, are you just working out too hard and you're not recovering? All these things are different little factors that are also really complicated factors that you can break down and analyze to ensure that you are growing, you are improving, and you're challenging yourself. So maybe you are in a rut professionally, but you decide to get into a contest with someone at work where you're going to work on your lean muscle mass or your body fat percentage, or you sign up for a physique show. Maybe you do a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, right? These are the fantastic opportunities and ideas that you can seek out solely on the premise of fitness. We could also talk about relationships. When was the last time you had a date night with no kids? When was the last time you got coffee with your college buddy or your military buddy? When was the last time you scheduled a call where you were not just in the car or you're not just catching each other on text with your friend that lives a few time zones away? Like, schedule that thing or plan a vacation, plan a staycation, right? There's so many different things that you can do for all these facets of quote unquote wellness. What about your finances? All right. We can keep going and going, but you get the point. So invest in your health, right? You can make some goals, some specific, measurable. What is the A? Attainable? Look it up. The SMART goals, time oriented, realistic. These are the different things you can look up. Set some goals and move toward that. Number 3 is to focus on your leadership. So I'm a huge fan of leadership at all levels. You have to lead yourself to lead others. And so we just talked about wellness, and wellness, presence of mind, a healthy, balanced mind is the root of leadership. So how are you impacting others? How are you influencing others, right? It's not about rank, it's about role. How are you bringing your best to the table to make sure you're delivering your best performance and helping your team deliver their best performance? So do you have mentors? Are you a mentor for others? Do you have collaborative conversations, sometimes with conflict, overall constructive, with your peers, with your peer group? Are you someone that enters the room and people smile because of it, or where people avert their eyes and they sigh? And maybe it's not that overt, maybe it's subtle. Are you the person that brings energy into a room, or are you the energy vampire where the oxygen gets sucked out? What are you? Who are you? What are you bringing to the table? So there's a lot that you can do to evolve this that I already spoke on, but there's also a lot of free resources, podcasts, audiobooks. The library is a fantastic, the library, the public library is a fantastic place. A new kind of favorite nerdy pastime of mine is going on the app and looking up a certain topic, whether it's philosophy or this author or this idea, and then just reserving too many books. Maybe I won't say right now, but too many books, because sometimes they come in a few days and sometimes they're weeks and weeks later because they're really popular. But this has happened a few times where I have to go pick up the books and I got email notifications for like a few, and there's easily 8 or 10 sitting there. I'm like, oh man. But better to like flip through, because some of those books are definitely not the book I'm in the mood for, or they're a bit dense for what I was looking for, or I can gleam, I can scan through and really get a lot from it in a compact amount of time. So consider those different things. And I'm not just talking about law enforcement leadership, military leadership. I'm talking about all leadership. There's so much that we can learn from all industries. And if you are an avid listener to the show, you will very well know that. Number 4 is to stay a student. I think the older adage was that once you hit 5 years as a cop, you feel like you've seen it all and you've seen most of it. But then pretty soon that complacency, or maybe even ego, will slap you in the face, because you will be awoken, hopefully not too violently, to something that you weren't aware of. And the older I get, the longer I have in this career, wearing different hats and just having a different life outlook, because my life is continually different, like just about everyone's is and should be. I feel like the more I learn, the less I know. And I think that is an extremely healthy thing to feel, not from a place of like incompetence or just not being good enough, but in this place of humility and curiosity and hunger to learn more. It's like the more expert level you get, the more you recognize all the voids of information that you don't know, or you don't know anymore, or maybe have not been discovered yet. And so to go down the mental rabbit holes of all these things, I truly believe is what keeps us young. I think it's what keeps us healthy. It's what keeps us connected. When we think about people that don't retire well, which is a very prevalent conversation in first responder life, is that they lose purpose. But along with that, like, they just lose like this connectedness to ability to be a part of something. And that is another way, I suppose, to say purpose. Like, they're not doing the activities, they're not interacting with the people, they're not solving problems, they're not having to learn anything. I remember hearing a while ago for Alzheimer's and dementia that it's not necessarily recall that you're trying to practice. And an example of that is crossword puzzles, Sudoku, right? Like, yeah, you're using your brain. They're puzzles and they're quote unquote good for your brain, as puzzles are. But like kind of recalling that information is a very different process and a very different challenge and requirement of the brain than learning something new, like an instrument, like a foreign language, like looking at a map and seeing a trail that you haven't seen before and observing the terrain that you haven't seen before, or experiencing a new place, traveling, whether it's locally or abroad, right? These different, unique, novel experiences impact your brain in a different way. And so seek new hobbies, do all those things. But while you're in the career, recognize that there's no way you can be a master at all. Policing is intrinsically complicated, and it gets more and more so with the evolving nature of the world, and as technology is going faster and faster, and we have all these vendors and tools and resources that are coming alongside and supporting law enforcement efforts, learning those alone. But then, you might have some of these really squared away younger cops that they can use all these different apps and tools and AI, if it's allowed by your policy and regulations and prosecutor's office, and or all these new technologies, whether it's robots and drones or UAS or drones for first responders, what have you. But talk to the old school detective about interviewing someone, about building rapport, about the long game. In this day and age of everything being virtually instantaneous and being able to compile all this information and data so quickly, what about those masters of their craft that talk to someone for hours, like a suspected murderer or someone that's accused of these heinous crimes against people or children, and they spend hours and days building a rapport with these people, right? Building a relationship, building trust. And so they get these extremely expansive interviews and confessions. Like, that's old school stuff. And that's things that take a career, some may even say a lifetime, aka like life's work, to become the expert in. So although you become a master in one thing, you can never be a master of it all. You could hardly be, dangerous level of at all of it. So if that is a rut that you're feeling, then you don't have to look far to find something of extreme interest to start diving into. And it does not mean you need to be a detective. It does not mean you need to be a firearms instructor. It just means that you have an ample opportunity to pick any of these things and become better at them as you go and grow. So keep staying a student. Even something simple like a software upgrade, like a new report writing system. Everyone, new and experienced, has to learn a new thing. And it's good for you. It's good to learn new things. Number 5, to wrap it all up, is to plan beyond the badge. So there are fortunately a lot of fantastic resources and personnel that are devoting a lot of time to free content and to paid services. Jess with Next Shift. We got Sean Nestor, who's local to Washington State, that does a lot of career and kind of life planning for those coming up in retirement or that want to start a side hustle or a business in addition to their first responder work. A lot of this goes to purpose. A lot of it goes to that next chapter beyond retirement. So these are all connected to things we said before, but finding your identity outside the job, these things are absolutely crucial. So recognize that we cannot do this job forever. Whether you do it for 4 years or 40 years, one day you have to take the badge off. You have to hand it back. Hopefully you get a retirement badge. That's super cool. But you got to turn in the uniform. You got to turn in the pistol. Hopefully you get to buy it back when it's about to cycle out, all those things. But the point is, you don't get to stay a full-fledged commissioned officer. And you shouldn't. Like, we should not live solely off of that. Like, we need to have other things going on in our lives to be healthy and balanced. And also, we can have our intended plans and we can be taking care of our mind, our body. We can be staying proficient, but those are only a handful of votes. And there is one vote that is very significant and it can outweigh all others. And that is just, if you want to call it fate, we'll call it fate, right? We don't know ultimately what is going to happen to any of us. And that's not to be morbid. That's not to be morbid at all. That's not to be depressing. We don't get a choice sometimes. We can do all we can do, and we should. We should absolutely try. We should plan. We should be responsible. We should be holistic in our thinking. But sometimes we don't get that choice on how long we do the job or how long we're on this earth. And so with all those things considered, we really need to take stock, to take inventory on what we have, what is important to us, how are we investing our time and our energy, And that goes right into many of these points I've already gone over, right? What is your why? What is your why in this job? What is your why on this earth? What is your why with your family? How do you want to show up as a friend? Invest in your health, right? Relationships, physical, mental health. How are you unloading the angst? Maybe it's working out. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's talking to someone. Maybe it's getting out in the forest. Maybe it's going to church. How are you doing these things? Evolving your leadership, that is taking ownership, that is being an asset to every group that you come across, even as a neighbor on your block. Are you staying a student? Are you perpetually learning? My goal is to be learning and challenging myself in different ways for all my days left here. And I hope you're doing the same. And I venture to guess that if you do, you'll have a very fulfilling life. And plan beyond the badge. This is a chapter of our lives. Hopefully for most of us, it's a very rewarding, though challenging chapter with a lot of hurt, with a lot of loss. But hopefully at the end of the day, it comes out as a net positive. I know it does for me, despite the things that I've encountered and despite the things I've seen happen to some of my friends and colleagues and other brothers and sisters across the nation and even beyond the borders in this job. But it's worth it to me. And I hope it's worth it to you. And I hope this conversation has been helpful for you, whether you are 5, 10, 15, 20 years on, whether you are actually in academy or you're about to go to your oral board to get hired. I hope that there's something that's been beneficial for you. If you're a retiree, if you're listening to this and it's helping you miss the good old days, hopefully that's a positive nostalgia and you're doing some or all of these things, or it's nudged you, inspired you to do a little bit more. And so with that, if you would like to learn more about how to build that mindset, how to develop routines that work for you, that are continually adaptable, that you can revisit and tweak, go to my website, bluegritwellness.com/shop. The Get Gritty video course series is on there. It is really what that is all focused on, from numerous people asking me, how do I improve work-life balance? Like, how do I make an effort towards wellness? How do I set my own goals? Like, I don't want to do a series of coaching calls. I just want to get all the information and build it on my own. It's all that. So check it out. Let me know if you have questions. You can always reach me on Instagram at Blue Grit Wellness. You can subscribe to the newsletter at the website. That is a free newsletter that covers topics like this, kind of these little thoughts and tips as we go. And if you want to hit me on email, best place is bluegritwellness@gmail.com or Eric Tung, my name, on LinkedIn. Thank you. Stay well, be safe, and stay gritty. Thank you for tuning into another episode of Blue Grit Radio. As always, support this community by subscribing, giving us a 5-star review, and following, liking, and sharing posts on Blue Grit Wellness on Instagram. You can reach me there or email me at bluegritwellness@gmail.com. Be well and stay gritty.